All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for sticking around to learn about something that isn't a whale. Today we'll be looking at great white sharks that are right here in Monterey Bay. Before I get into that, just a bit about me. As you can probably tell, I'm not from here. I am from Australia. I grew up in Western Australia and was very lucky that my parents took me to the beach a lot and really inspired me to become a marine biologist. So I moved here 6 years ago after completing my Ph.D. in Western Australia, where I studied tiger shark and whale shark movements. I moved here 6 years ago and joined Barbara Bloch's lab as a postdoc, where I look at the movement ecology of large epipelagic fishes. So you can see a gigantic bluefin over there, for instance. And now I'm a staff scientist leading our white shark tagging program. So when I was putting this talk together, I was thinking about predators. And I thought this was really interesting because coming from Australia, everyone's always like, oh, you have scary animals that are going to get you. And we don't actually have any of the big predators like you guys have on land. So bear is your state animal here. These are some trail cam photos from one of our grad students, Chloe, a mountain lion and a coyote just in our backyard here. But we do have some similarities. So we have our dangerous snakes. You guys have rattlesnakes. We have orcas. They're globally distributed. And then we have white sharks. And so this is also found in Australia and was always my favorite species growing up. So a bit of a background for just white sharks generally. They're a large coastal and pelagic shark. So pelagic meaning they go offshore into really deep waters. They're an apex predator, though that's a little debated now because orcas actually predate on them, so they're not actually at the top of the food chain. They're wide-ranging, so found pretty globally. They have a slow life history, which basically means they take a long time to get to maturity and have very few pups. So when that happens and your animal is threatened, if something affects it, it takes longer for them to recover. So they've been actually, on a global scale, their populations are moderately depleted, and they've been ranked as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List. From a global standpoint, we have some of the areas in orange where they're known to be found. So if you watch Shark Week, you know they're in California and South Africa, Australia, Cape Cod. But there's some regions that they're a bit harder to find because their populations have been much more affected. So the Mediterranean, for example, we have a collaborator working out there trying to find the last live white sharks. They're found in fishing markets, but they haven't yet encountered a live one. And then in purple, it's where we think they could be based on our tracking data that finds they go really far distances and what we know about the environment. So they could be pretty much anywhere except at our higher latitudes. So what are some of these threats that are affecting them? So number one, which I always think is interesting, Jaws back in 1975 was one of the first times people started thinking of white sharks. And unfortunately, it had a negative effect on a lot of people. There was kind of the phrase going around, the only good shark is a dead shark. And that really horrified the creators of Jaws. So both the author of the novel, Peter Benchley, and Steven Spielberg, the director of the film, were horrified by this, and they became big advocates for marine conservation as a result. Affecting other sharks, not just white sharks, so they're caught in fisheries for traditionally their liver oil, so that's in squalene and a lot of cosmetics. Their cartilage has been used in supplements to make you live longer. Shark fin soup is a traditional Asian delicacy that is basically just texture-based. And then a lot of people like trophy hunting for the jaws and the teeth. Another interesting one is it's often a reaction of governments when there's a lot of shark attacks. There are shark culls as a result. So closer to home for me, back in 2012, there was a spate of shark attacks in Western Australia, which resulted in the government going out and doing this heavy shark cull. But this had huge public pushback. There were these giant protests. I actually attended that one. And within a year, the government stopped the shark cull because no one actually wanted it. And just a little plug for this film, Shark Water. I watched it in 2007. It's about the shark finning industry and other threats to sharks. And this was really transformative for me. I was in high school and it pushed me to really want to be a shark biologist. So looking more regionally to us in Monterey Bay. So for over 20 years, we've been working on these northern aggregations here where we see adult white sharks around pinniped aggregations. So kind of this red triangle area. More recently, we've been discovering these hotspots for juvenile sharks, much closer to us in Marina and Aptos, so in Monterey Bay itself, so we've been starting to work on these. So our project, we now call the Monterey Bay White Shark Project. We kind of work at Año Nuevo and in Monterey Bay. And then further north, we have the California White Shark Project, who we collaborate with, who collects data from these northern aggregations. This video might not work. Oh, it will. Nice. So this is a bit about our project.
So we're really fortunate here in California that running along our coast is one of the wildest places on Earth, the California Current. And what we've learned is right here may be one of the hottest places on the planet.
Oh, beautiful fish. Look at this. We've been following these sharks for almost 25 years. The electronic tags allow us to follow where the sharks go. They also allow us to know when they arrive at our coast.
The Monterey Bay White Shark Project has brought together a consortium of local researchers who are working together to track the movements of these predators and to census their numbers. And together, we're trying to understand the interactions of predator and prey, the sharks, the pinnipeds, and how they interact within the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary and their movements into the offshore Pacific waters.
To really understand the white sharks here in Monterey Bay, we also need to understand what their prey are doing. So the Block Lab looking at the white shark movements here, but we have other collaborators at UC Santa Cruz and the University of Washington that can provide the expertise to understand the prey.
The Monterey Bay White Shark Project is an outgrowth of an earlier program that we had here with Barbara Block and the Monterey Bay community, the Tagging Pacific Predators. The question with this research project is to see the relationship between where most of the sea lions and seals are and to see if that's where is driving the presence of the sharks. Do the white sharks track the major areas along the coast where we have the most sea lions and the most seals? But amazingly, we don't know that yet.
We're building a surveillance system in our neighborhood where we can actually pick up the animals as they swim by the buoys, and an acoustic tag will send an underwater signal that's detected by the buoy. It goes up to an Iridium satellite and immediately down to our iPhone, where we can actually keep track of which sharks are swimming by. Over the past 30 years, we've done a tremendous job learning about where white sharks are along North American shores and building in protections that help preserve these populations. Once they migrate offshore, however, they're exposed to international fisheries. And we're thinking about what level of international protection is required to ensure these sharks have a future in our ecosystem in Monterey Bay.
So that's a little 3-minute clip of a longer 10-minute video that's going to be playing at the Santa Cruz Sanctuary Center from June 8th for a whole year. So you can go check out an exhibit we're going to have for white sharks there later in the year. But so moving on to what we are doing locally, what we've done in the past, so what we've learned and what we're continuing to look at, just some basic biological information about these animals, how big they are when they're born, when they undergo this ontogenetic shift, so when they shift from a juvenile stage to a mature individual, how long they are gestating for, how their litter size and their max age. But what you might see there is a lot of question marks, and this is based on very small sample sizes. We actually don't know some of these basic pieces of biology, and this is one of the most studied shark species, so I think that's kind of wild. But what we do know for our California animals that's made it easier for us to study them is in fall and winter months, they're aggregating around these known locations. So during that period, we can reliably go out and collect data, which is really handy. For juveniles, we're just beginning to learn about where they are, so this is really just the beginning for us in understanding those animals. So what are our questions? So back in 2018, a group of global experts in white sharks got together, and then we have so many questions, but they were trying to figure out what are the major questions we need to understand them, to conserve them, and to manage their populations. So one just being, what is the size of their population and how it's trending? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? Is it stable? What are the mechanisms driving their movements? So why are they moving the way they do? What are the critical habitats and how does that change as they grow? Where are they outside their known hotspots? So we know some of the locations they like, but we have a lot of remote coast here. So in Oregon and Washington, it's really hard to access the coast, and we think the sharks are moving up there, but we don't know where. And then also how will climate change impact their populations. So as the waters increase in temperature, their prey are going to change their movements, and we need to understand how the white sharks might change. So how do we collect this data? So we're going out to these hotspots for the adults. This is around these pinniped aggregations, so that's a photo from Año Nuevo. And then for the juveniles, we're going to these kind of sandy beaches. So the methods kind of differ depending what population class we're looking at. So for the adults, basically we're going out on these small vessels. I'll just orient you. So we have a bit of bait in the water. You'll see one of our techs hitting the bait. We have that bit of carpet, kind of roughly shaped like an elephant seal. That one's name is Ellie. And that draws them close to the boat. And when they come close to the boat, we can film them, we can deploy tags, and we can collect samples. So you can kind of see this process. We have 2 sharks around the boat. I've got a camera on a pole there filming the individual there. This one gets Ellie in its mouth, which is not meant to because our tech was slow on the line, but it grabs it, it doesn't want to eat it anymore. Oh, it also doesn't want to play the video anymore. There we go. And then I can film it as it goes by. So what pieces of data are we collecting here? So our number one thing we collect are the fin IDs. So each dorsal fin is unique to each individual, so just like your fingerprint, and so we can collect a huge database using that trailing edge. They have different nicks and notches. Secondly, we get the camera underneath the individual to determine the sex, so the presence or absence of claspers determines if it's a male, like on the right with claspers, and a female on the left. We determine the length. Traditionally, this was done by us just going 3, 2, 1 and all shouting a number and averaging it based on like the known back length of the boat. There are some shrinking sharks in our records, so we definitely didn't get it completely right. But we're using drones a lot more now to validate these estimates. We deploy tags, acoustic and satellite tags using poles, and then we collect samples and environmental DNA samples. So just from a below look at what this looks like. You see this shark, we get a snapshot of its fin. And we get underneath it and we can see that this one is a female. For the juveniles, we don't bait. We're not quite close to recreational waters, so we use drones to find the sharks. So this is our grad student, Alexandra. She's flying the drone at the same time as putting the camera in the water, which is kind of wild. This is a lot more of an athletic feat. The sharks are a little more skittish at the juvenile stages. So this is Marina State Beach. I'm going to show you the video from under this side. You can see they're nice and close to the shore in shallow water. These ones are very skittish, close to the boat. So I'm going to go through each of these bits of data and what we're using them with. So as I mentioned, the photo ID, so these are each different fin IDs, which we're collecting, which can be used in population models and tell us what the sharks are doing over time. Unfortunately for us, for the most part until recently, this was all done visually. So at the end of the season, we'd print all the fins and have some kind of intense matching game trying to figure out who was seen before. Our record is huge, so we have thousands of these images now. So it got a pretty big data set. Unfortunately, I'll go into some techniques that have helped. But just if you guys want to have a look, there's 2 individuals that are the same here. So if anyone wants to guess which ones are the same. Nice, that was quick. Yeah, 1 and 3. So we also have a top shot camera. So there's a lot of, the water visibility varies. Also historically, the cameras weren't as good, but we know these features are really stable. So that's 14 years apart, the same individual, and you can see that fin ID there. So we've been working for the last couple of years with the Gator Lab at UC Santa Cruz, and they've helped us a lot in using computer vision techniques to start automating our process a little bit. It's not perfect, but it's way easier than us printing and matching every fin to thousands of images. So as I mentioned, we use this to look at population trends, so we can use these mark recapture models. Basically, we've found that it's a pretty small population here in Central California, so less than 300 mature individuals. We have some evidence that the population was increasing, but this was done back in 2018, so we're kind of due for an update, but we have some fin ID matching to get done before that, so we're on our way. So we collect a lot of video data, and so there's other things we can do with it, just other than sexing and getting the fin IDs. So we can actually found out we've been recording lots of different scarring patterns. So this is one, I want you guys to guess what you think made this scar. Good guess. I thought it was an orca. Turns out it was another white shark. Yeah, so when they're mating, they actually latch onto each other to mate, which is kind of wild. So we also found they heal quite quickly, which is good, because if your strategy to mate is bite each other, you'd probably want to heal quickly, or you're all going to have your females all dying. This one... Yeah, there's probably a prop from a boat. It's a good one. So there's probably a claw from an elephant seal. So we see a lot of marks from pinnipeds as they try and fight back when the shark's trying to feed on them. And this last one, that helps from the last talk if you're here. Some kind of fishing gear, yeah. We actually fortunately saw this shark later on without the gear, so it had the gear removed, and so we saw it heal pretty quick, which was great. So as we can ID these animals, we can look at these scarring patterns and see how they heal over time, which has been really cool. So each of these also, just for fun, have a name, because we get to name all our sharks. So later on, if anyone has any good names, let me know. But we can see healing. So this shark's name's Batman, and we've seen it heal. So you can kind of see it filling in the fin on the right there. So we think that was probably made from a prop from a boat, and we've seen that one heal. Some scars don't heal. So this one's called flat top. It's had the top of its fin sliced off. But they seem to survive well enough with half their fins. We've seen the tails half cut off, and they're doing okay. So we're collecting drone imagery as well. So as I mentioned, our grad student Alexandra, she's joined the lab from the marine robotics lab at Duke and brought some pretty great skills, so we can get the length of the animal, but we can also get the girth, so we can look at the body condition of the animals. And she's done some pretty cool stuff with computer vision as well. So labeling the sharks and getting things like the tail beat of the animal as it swims at the surface from some computer vision techniques. So just another video of what this looks like. She'd label this image afterwards and get this very, very chill, steady swimming estimates from this animal. Getting into tagging, so this is my specialty. I call myself a movement ecologist. I love movement and understanding why these animals move the way they do. We use a few different kinds of tags. So the top left is a camera tag, has a lot of different sensors in it, but basically tells us over short time periods where these animals are moving and how. We have acoustic tags, which is top right, and then we have satellite tags at the bottom. So this is from one of the camera tags. I think this dispelled the myth that they don't move through kelp forests. But this animal was hunting through this kelp forest in South Africa looking for sea lions. So yeah, we learn a lot about it at a short time scale. They're really storage and battery intensive, so we can only deploy them for a couple of days at a time, and we have to get the tag back in order to download all that data. But yeah, they're pretty cool. But I think we have over 500 hours of footage, and we never got a predation. So we just had to watch them just swimming around for hours and hours. You get pretty seasick, and we never saw one actually eating a pinniped. I think we saw one fish eaten or something, but so it was kind of sad for us. I wanted the predation. The next kind of tags we use that were kind of talked about in that video earlier is acoustic tags. So basically we have these receivers or listening devices along our coast, and they're listening for the tags. So each of these tags ping a unique sequence every 2 minutes. It's kind of like if I walked around and was saying Sammy, Sammy, Sammy every 2 minutes, but only if someone was listening would they know I was there. So these sharks swim around, and within around 200 to 500 yard radius can detect the tagged sharks. So we have these receivers down the coast, and then periodically, every 6 months or so, we have to recover them, clean them, and download the data. So we're actually doing this earlier this week in some really soupy conditions. But some of them also have a transmitter that has a live feed to us, so it can tell us when these sharks are being detected. So you can actually go to our website. We have a live one off Hopkins and a live one off Año Nuevo. So this was just a couple of weeks ago. We can see who was detected at Hopkins. So sometimes our divers like to check if a shark was detected at Hopkins before they go in the water. So what can we do with this data? We can look at the seasonality of these animals. So for instance, this is comparing subadult males and females and adult males and females and looking at their timing. And we can see actually some differences between what we call sexual segregation, with the males and females having different peak timings on the coast. Subadults have a bit of a greater spread. We can also look at by location. So you can see that adults really spend all their time at those main aggregation sites in that red triangle region, while the subadults seem to be moving a lot more up and down the coast, all the way to southern sites such as in LA. What's been fun though is discovering some new regions. So these receivers are put all up and down the coast for all different projects. So for instance, up in Washington, I think this was deployed for a salmon project just for 4 months, and it detected 7 of our sharks in a 4-month period. And we had no idea they were going all the way up there. We also think we found a new aggregation site in Diablo Canyon that's between Pismo and Morro Bay, and we have sharks going repeatedly there in the last couple of years and spending a lot of time. I didn't know this when I was diving there a couple of years ago, so now I'm maybe not go diving there again. But as a part of our project, we've really extended this array. So this is just the last year. We've put so many more receivers to try and figure out what these animals are doing locally, so stay tuned, we're still getting into this data. The satellite tags we put out, so these are deployed on a shark for about a year, and they're recording light, depth, and temperature and have an internal clock. After about a year, they pop off the animal and then transmit the data back to us. From there, we can use these light-based geolocation methods to determine where they were. So basically, it uses the light levels to look at the time of sunrise and sunset, and from there we can kind of model where these animals have been. So we first used these in the late 90s, and it was the first time we realized that these animals were going all the way offshore. Hit this, please. Well, this might be the one that doesn't play. Well, imagine these tracks going all the way over here into the white shark, what we call the White Shark Cafe. We don't know still why they're going out there, and that's still some of the work we're doing. But before we used these tags, we just thought these animals stayed on the coast all year round. But every year around this time, actually, the animals are all offshore right now, thousands of miles away. Come on. So there you go, there's all the tracks. So why move? Why could they be doing this? One theory is they're going offshore to feed. They're diving down really deep where there's a lot of tuna, a lot of squid, and maybe feeding out there. They could be mating out there. That's one of the theories. That's why they call it the White Shark Cafe. They go to meet their friends and maybe have something to eat. Or it could be a temperature thing. Where they go offshore is a lot warmer, so they might be using these warmer waters to grow. What's been a really fun project for me, this is what I'm currently working on right now. So these are 11 tracks from the last couple of years, and I can color them by month. You can kind of see it's just a bit of a mess. This is thousands of kilometers of area, and they're all there at different times. But from our fin ID, we found out that the same animal had been tracked 2 years in a row, so we got 2 of these return migrations. And if you look at it, it did the exact same thing 2 years in a row by month, which is kind of insane. Like, if you threw me in the middle of the ocean, I'd have no idea where to go, and this animal did the same thing. In the little yellow-orange bit is Guadalupe Island, so it went there at the same time. So we're looking at these repetitive movements and seeing if this is a common thing in white sharks. Do they get to this kind of adult stage and they've learnt somehow? They have like a memory-based migration. I think it's kind of crazy because we kind of think of them as mindless predators. In terms of their vertical movements, this is also pretty cool. This is over the course of a year. So when they're on the coast, they just stay really shallow in less than 100 meters. And then they head offshore and they're just constantly diving up and down really deep. And we recorded these to over 1,000 meters, which is kind of insane. It's dark, it's cold down there. What are they doing? So why dive? Again, they might be going down there to eat. They might be going down there to cool down. It's really hot up there, so they go down and cool down for a minute. They could be using navigational cues, so going down, the magnetic field changes, so they could be using that to figure out where they are. Or they could be evading predators. So orcas only dive to about 500 meters or so they could go dive down the dark, cold waters to escape from their predator. On a smaller scale, we're seeing that their movements are deeper during the day than during the night, and this is thought to be a visual hunting strategy. So they stay down and just past where maybe their pinniped prey can see them, and then they can kind of use a surprise kind of attack mode. We also see that they're deeper during a full moon than a new moon, which is kind of cool. So what ecological interactions do they have? So we kind of split these into direct and indirect. So direct is your classic predation behavior when you're directly attacking your prey. And then there's indirect prey behavior, which we call risk effects. It's kind of the way that their prey are modifying their behavior to minimize their chance of getting predated on. So the ways that we've seen this in pinnipeds is through grouping behaviors. So when we see them migrate offshore, they're in these huge groups instead of going out one at a time. We can see them changing their diving behavior. So we see elephant seals following the seabed on the way out rather than being at the surface where they're more vulnerable to attack. And they can also change the time of year that they depart offshore. So maybe doing it at a time that there's less white sharks around. In terms of some of the other animals we see, so this is a study published back in 2016 looking at sea otters. And we've seen increases in sea otter mortality in the last few years, which is kind of matching the increase in pinniped populations. We think this is mostly a case of mistaken identity. A lot of the sharks bite a sea otter thinking it's a pinniped that they want to eat, realize it's not, they let go. The otter unfortunately doesn't survive the attack and washes up, but we've been seeing a little more of this lately. Another one are killer whales. I think this is kind of insane. So the killer whales just want to eat the liver. So the liver of the white shark is full of oil. It's got a lot of energy in it. And the killer whales dissect out the liver, and that's it. So you can see that tiny hole in the shark there. That's just, I don't know how they do it, but they suck out the liver, and then the white shark washes up on shore. So this is from South Africa. We haven't actually documented this at all in California. It's assumed it happens, and there has been some risk effect behavior from the white sharks. So from whale watching records, we've seen that when there's a lot of orcas around the Farallon Islands, the white sharks move to Año Nuevo instead. So they move away from where they think orcas are. So I kind of assume from that means something's happened in the past here, but not too sure. So tying it all together, my boss always refers to Monterey Bay as the blue Serengeti. And we're kind of putting together through our project all the different pieces of the puzzle. In order to understand why white sharks move, we have to kind of understand what the prey are doing as well. So as you saw from the video, that's what we're doing, the Monterey Bay White Shark Project. We have the Costa Lab going out and tagging sea lions and elephant seals. They're putting trail cams on the beaches to see when sea lions are going to the water. We have drone surveys every month going out to where we also have the acoustic receivers to look at when there's the most sea lions, are we seeing the most white sharks. We've also been doing that at San Carlos Beach, which has been really interesting. We just downloaded that receiver for the first time. And I'm beginning to see probably a pattern when we see all those sea lions coming out on the beach and not letting us dive anymore. We've seen more white sharks around, so that's been really interesting. What can we do? I think one of the most important things is education, so learning about sharks, why they're important, what they're doing, what we're doing. So you can follow our Instagram. This is a new thing we're trying to plug. We have some stickers. You can follow, go to your state park, learn more about, you can go to Año Nuevo, you can see the elephant seals. Watch what you're eating, watch what is in your cosmetics. When you're out on your boat, slow down in coastal areas. So as you saw, there's a lot of those prop marks and scars on sharks. So just being slow in the areas where you know there are sharks around. Go to your local beaches, join surf rider cleanups. So these are some of the ways that we can participate. So yeah, thank you so much. This is a huge collaboration, many, many people going in to learn all we have today and hopefully learning more in the future. So yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there is. We've been out at like SoCal in Santa Cruz when there's some of the people going looking at the white sharks. I think it just being slow, having some regulations. Like I worked a lot with whale sharks, and in Western Australia it's really well regulated, so just keeping a certain distance, having only a certain amount of boats in the water at one time around a shark. I think can learn from that industry, but I think it's still in its infancy probably. Yeah.
Between here, West Australia, and say Southeast Asia, what's the like with sharks right now?
I was pleasantly surprised with California. I think everyone here has a much more positive view of white sharks than Australia. Australia, it's really polarized, so people are either like on the cull side and against it and think white sharks are evil, or they're huge, like really into sharks, like they just shark people. So Southeast Asia I don't know as well, but yeah, I'm pleased with the Californian take on white sharks. We can. So if we get them back, we get a much more high resolution download of the data. So it transmits through the satellites. We're limited in the bandwidth that can transmit. So we can go from having a data point like every few hours to, if we recover it, we have a data point every second. So when we try and have them pop off after a year, so they're back on the coast, and it's kind of like a treasure hunt. We have like a little antenna, we have to go find it, and there's tiny things floating in the ocean. We've actually had a kid find one on the beach once, which was really fun, so we got to go meet this kid who was a big shark enthusiast and have a chat. It was pretty cute. So sometimes we've had some issues, the tags themselves just don't work, so we lost half our tags to not working, which is pretty crappy. They're $4,000 a piece, and for them not to pop up, we have some words with the company that makes them. But we probably we recovered 6 of 7 last year, which is, our lab's really good at it. My boss really, like, it's a Sunday morning. She's like, everyone get to the boat right now. We have to go get this tag. She's really into it, which has resulted in us having one of the richest data sets on these animals, which is amazing. Yeah.
On the tags, I noticed that you have tags on the foot head. And so if, like, a shark was to eat it as a food head and then eat the tag, are they causing damage to the sharks? And then the other thing is that you mentioned that you are a diver and you might not dive anymore in the area where you notice there's a lot of sharks. If you were diving and you felt that there was some sort of like questionable behavior, would you try to like slowly get out of the water? Would you like try to just be, still? Like what would you?
Yeah, for the first question, we don't know. We know that our sharks have eaten some of the tagged seals. Like Roxanne Beltran, who works at UC Santa Cruz, will complain to us that one of our sharks ate one of her elephant seals that was tagged. But we think that the sharks should be all right. They eat a lot of things. It's like tiger sharks have been found with car tires and license plates and crazy things in their stomach, and they're just fine. It's kind of wild. In terms of my own risk, I'd like to think I'd just be calm, and I haven't encountered I've dived with tiger sharks and other animals, and I think being on the bottom, you're much safer. I know a lot of people who dive and say, yeah, they're on the bottom. Safety stops are when I'm like, ooh, like rolling around. I would skip a safety stop if I felt that I was feeling threatened. But the way the sharks behave, I've learned a lot from watching them, and it's actually made me less scared because they're very curious and they also avoid risk themselves. So they'll be circling the boat. There's like a scent of their prey in the water, but they're still like, that's a big boat. That's something I don't know, and they take their time. When they like get into an aggressive pose, you can kind of tell. So I think I'd like use that knowledge. But I have a new analogy for shark attack risk. Like everyone's always like, oh, you're more likely to get attacked. I mean, you're more likely to die from a car crash. But like if I'm in the water a lot, I've got a higher risk than someone that's not in the water. But when driving in a car, I also weigh my risks. There's more risk if I drive in the snow. It's more risk if it's someone who doesn't have a license driving the car. Same in going in the ocean. There's different times of years, there's different places that you're more risky. So you've got to have an education. It's how our research can help. We really want to, I think some places are probably less safe to get in the water than others. So, yeah. It's a good question. We have Alexandra, the drone pilot, her PhD is looking at these ontogenetic shifts. We know at roughly about 2.5 meters, they change, they get bigger, their teeth change, and they change their strategy from feeding on animals on the bottom to that silhouette-based surface hunting strategy. I think it will probably vary between individuals. It will depend how fast they grow, how warm the water is, how successful they are. We have some coming into Año Nuevo. We saw a 7-footer there, and we're like, what are you doing here? Like, you don't belong here. You've made a mistake. But yeah, so I think it would be variable. Yeah.
So we live in Marina and go to research all the time. I noticed that drone shop is off State Beach. Is there something else that keeps the tracks?
Good question.
I also know an item is
Yeah. At Marina? Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of surfers see them. I know someone who likes to go out just to surf to try and find them and see them. We're still figuring it out. We really don't know. They might be feeding, but we haven't even seen them feeding there. It could just be like they like those conditions. It's a good place for them to grow. They're away. They might be we call them a nursery area because they're away from larger sharks that could predate on them. Yeah, but come back in a year, maybe we'll have more answers.
So there is a higher concentration of sharks in this region than other areas of
Again, we'll tell you soon. We have those receivers are all over the bay, so from Santa Cruz through Moss Landing to Marina to the breakwater. So we'll know soon. We've been tagging juveniles, so we hopefully, we'll have some more information soon. Yeah. Well, our Alexandra likes working there the most, probably. It's easier, the conditions are cleaner. We go to Soquel Cove and the water is really dirty. It's hard to find sharks. Marina's a lot cleaner and nicer. Yeah. I can never say zero risk, but I think that it's a less risky activity than others. Yeah. Not here. I've seen kayaks. There was one in Western Australia. A kayak was bitten and someone fell off their kayak, but they were fine. But yeah, I can't speak to, can't tell you zero risk. Yeah, I can't remember. See who was first. I don't know how they do it. You can look in a lot of products you can look online. You can see if they have squalene, but squalene is they can artificially create it now. So you can actually look at the cosmetic website and see where their squalene comes from. So it's called SQUALENE. But I think they're doing a lot better now. So this was more of a historic thing and cheaper, older brands. But yeah, you can look into it. Yeah. Yeah. The fewer attacks on people or anything. In terms of, I think males, females, I think it's roughly equal. The thing about females, because they gestate for 12 to 18 months offshore, they come back every 2 years while males come back every year. So at the adult aggregations, there's probably double the number of males. We see more males just because the females are offshore. We haven't even seen them forage in these nursery areas, so we're not too sure what's going on. Yeah, there's less or more attacks. One more? Okay.
Yeah, just, what are your thoughts on the great white shark dives in the cages? Is this something that you think is just bad because they're chumming and creating a bad association between people and food, or you think it's fine?
It's a good question. There are some industries that do it really well. So there's been studies on them. In Australia, there was a study that found that it didn't disrupt their normal behaviour. But in some areas, the way that the cage and the people is not as ethical. Sharks get stuck in the cage. So in Guadalupe, they banned it because there was a lot of issues going on there. There were people getting out of the cage. There was some of the behaviour of other animals in the area was changing. So dolphins and some of the fish there were changing their behaviour based on how much chum was in the water. The white sharks themselves weren't affected. And local fishermen were getting bitten more because they'd been attracted more to the area. So there's some ethical ways to do it. You can kind of, I'm not sure if there's like a standard to like look at the industry you're going with, but in Australia and South Africa at least, there's some good cage diving companies, and a lot of research is done through them as well. So getting a lot of fin IDs and deploying tags. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.